Hey everybody, are we live? I believe we are. This is Howard Jacobson from WellStart Health. I'm the Chief of Behavioral Science, and this Facebook Live is designed to help you lead a better life. And I'm just trying to find, why do I always have trouble finding the window? There it is. Great, so now I can see comments and reactions. Today, I want to talk I think pretty briefly about willpower. And what we hear from people who begin this journey is that willpower is the thing that gets them down. Whoops, what am I doing here? Sorry. I still don't know how to use this thing. Output, options, output, recording, window. It's window. Okay. Willpower is the thing that stops people from achieving their goals, right? I was doing so good, and then fill in the blank. I went out to dinner and I just couldn't resist. It all smelled so good. Everyone else was having it. Or people will doom themselves in advance. Like, yeah, I know I can do this for a while, but I don't have willpower. It's almost like someone is saying, well, yeah, I could run 100 yards, but I can't run a marathon. And of course, there's a big difference between, which may be a very accurate assessment. Like, some people cannot run a marathon, right? I took me how many years? 2 years before I tried to run a marathon, of training for a marathon. So there are certain things where, like, the 26th mile of a marathon is objectively harder than the first mile of the marathon. The 26th day of eating clean is not harder than the first day of eating clean. It only is if we think it is, right? And a lot of people have this sense that, like, willpower is this resource and it gets used and used up. And the longer we do the thing, the longer we adhere to this protocol, the harder and harder it becomes. It's almost like the visual is, I'm hanging off the edge of the cliff. And I'm hanging on and I'm hanging on, but inevitably I'm going to fatigue. And one finger after another is going to slip, and then I'm going to plummet. And of course, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And marathons are like that. Like, the longer you run, the more tired you will get. And hanging off the edge of a cliff, I believe, is like that. The longer you hang on, the more tired you will get, the more likely you are. The longer it goes, the more likely you are to fatigue and slip. But that's not the model that we apply to behavior change. And well, that's not really what I want to talk about, though, in regard to willpower, because there's a lot of debate about whether willpower is a fatigable muscle, whether you can have such a thing as willpower depletion or ego depletion, as some researchers talk about it. And there's really interesting cross-cultural studies. Like, it almost gets to the point, like, if you believe in it, then it will happen to you. But if you don't believe in it, it won't happen to you. And certain cultures where they don't believe, where they just believe in working hard all the time, don't seem to have this issue of willpower fatigue. But what I want to talk about today is the fact that what I think the problem is not enough willpower, but too much willpower. I think people who are struggling to shift the way they eat, to shift their lifestyle to become healthier, are actually suffering from too much willpower. Well, what could I possibly mean by that? So if you are, let's say you're eating lots of junk food, what's the cause? What's the root cause of eating all that junk food? Now, we know that junk food is highly palatable. It's often created to be addictive-like, right? And we know it's got lots of things that we like. It signals to our brain that we're getting good stuff, right? All the sugar, salt, fat, right? High caloric density, fireworks in our mouths type of food, which back in the day in the ancestral environment would say, calorie bonanza. Let's eat as much as we can, because who knows when this will come around again, right? So we know that there is inherent programming that's evolution has given our brains that makes us prefer these foods. But at the same time, Josh LaJaunie, co-founder of Well Start Health, my buddy and business partner, often reminds us that you don't get to be 100 pounds or more overweight because you like Whoppers or because you like Little Debbie's snack cakes. That sure, if you're eating this, you can get to 30, 40, 50, 60 pounds overweight, but at a certain point there's an equilibrium and you get full. The people who are really struggling with these processed food, again, we'll call them addiction-like behaviors, is what's the root cause of that? It's because we learn a circuit. We learn a thing that works. All right. So that's what all a habit is a thing that works. It's something that we do that works, or it's something that we do that worked for a while and it still works in the moment. Because if it didn't work in the moment, we wouldn't keep doing it. So what do I mean by working? So Judson Brewer, who wrote the book, The Craving Mind, talks about this conditioned loop, which goes like this. I feel bad. And this can happen as a baby, right? Or at any point, you learn this. I feel bad, and I don't like to feel bad. I'm going to look for a way to feel better. Somebody gives me ice cream. All of a sudden, the bads go away, and the goods just blossom inside me. I have learned that ice cream is a thing that works when I feel bad, when I feel sad, when I feel angry, irritated, frustrated, lonely, whatever. Right? And so I've learned something. And so the next time I feel bad, my brain is going to think, I want to not feel bad. What are some things I can do? And the easiest one in this society is ice cream. So all of a sudden, I do it again, and I do it again. And now the ice cream feeling bad loop becomes so highly reinforced that I begin to anticipate it. Oh, I think I might be in a situation where I would feel bad later. Let me prophylactically have some ice cream. Let me think about that situation that may never occur. I'm starting to feel bad thinking about a situation in which I might feel bad. Let me have some ice cream. And all of a sudden, we've got ice cream as the panacea to all our emotional woes. And for you, of course, it could be potato chips, it could be ribeye steak, it could be Kit Kats, whatever your, I don't want to say drug, but substance of choice that provides you with that experience of getting from a state of not so happy to a state of happy. So what does this have to do with willpower? Here's the thing. If we are feeling bad on a regular basis, not just sort of, every so often, but just the substrate of our lives, and this is true for so many people that I know, they're not fulfilled in their jobs. They're not really fulfilled in relationships. Their bodies don't feel good. They hardly have time for hobbies. They're often so tired and stressed out that instead of doing anything generative for themselves, anything self-healing, anything that resembles self-care, it becomes falling into addictions, falling into these mind-altering substances, these mood-altering substances that work so quickly. And especially if we're talking about food, so like certainly alcohol, cigarettes, and other drugs can do the same thing as powerfully or more powerfully, but there's trouble, you have trouble getting them. You can't get liquor in North Carolina on Sundays. Cigarettes, you got to be over 18, and there's lots of social opprobrium around that, and lots of places where you can't smoke. It's been stigmatized. Illegal drugs, obviously, there's lots of things you have to go through, hoops you have to jump through, and risks you're taking. But food has none of those problems. In fact, it's so socially acceptable, right? And also the other socially acceptable things are workaholism, anything involving being on a screen, right? That's awesome. We can just, and we can do that in private, and there's, many fewer legal issues around that within limits, of course. So what we have is people who are exerting tremendous willpower over not, excuse me, not things like avoiding sugar or avoiding fat, but things like dealing with an unsatisfactory life, right? How much willpower does it take to get up every day and go to work, and in a toxic environment, in an environment where you don't feel like you belong, in an environment where you don't feel like you're making a difference, in an environment where you don't feel appreciated, in an environment where you don't feel like you're being adequately compensated, in an environment that may not have windows that open, that may have noise pollution, that may have off-gassing rugs? Like, that's more willpower than I possess. I haven't, I had summer internships in places like that. In the early 1980s. I haven't been able to do anything like that in over 30 years. Like to me, seeing someone get up and do that every day, and I'm not saying that people shouldn't do it. I couldn't, right? It's if you need that job to support yourself and your family, to take care of your responsibilities, then of course you're going to do it. But that's a tremendous amount of willpower every day. And not only willpower to get up and go to work, but willpower to do your job, willpower to be civil to people that you'd rather not be civil to. And the same thing we can say about people who get up every day who don't have social connections, who are lonely, who are isolated. The willpower it takes to get up and go through another day of feeling disconnected from other human beings. What about the willpower in a relationship where you feel like there's no honest communication? Maybe you're not alone, but you're in conflict. And every day you come back to that house and you go to sleep next to someone and you wake up next to someone. This is all willpower. This is all people overriding their natural inclinations. Right? We think we don't have willpower. We think, well, I can't give up that piece of chocolate or that ice cream or that cake or that piece of pizza, or I can't, stick to going to the gym. But when you look at what people are sticking to on the global sense because they feel like they have no choice, or because it's their identity to be a responsible person, or because they have to stay for the kids, or whatever it is, we are not a society lacking in willpower. We are a society in which most people are holding it together with willpower almost all of their waking hours. And the only time they get to relax that willpower is when they're indulging in stuff that's not good for them. So you can see, like, this stuff is not the problem. I mean, it is the problem, but you know what I mean? It's not the root of the problem. This is the medicine that people are taking to get through their day. So what's the solution here? If we are so tightly wound running on willpower, trying to achieve what we think we are responsible to do, and the only time we get to let that go is these indulgences, where do we have any wiggle room? I see a couple of places. One is, we all know that we can replace some of those guilty pleasures, some of the distraction, the numbing, the addiction, with things that don't require willpower but feel much better and that are actually good for us. So having a conversation with someone that we truly care about and we feel validated and seen and respected in their presence can give us a boost that chocolate or pizza or video games or Facebook or Instagram cannot give us. So looking for ways to align our pleasure impulses with the natural world. Because that's the problem, right? Our pleasure impulses are misaligned with the world that commerce has created around us. Our pleasure impulses are misaligned with Snickers bars at the Lowe's checkout counter. But it is not misaligned with human contact, with connection, with love, with being part of community, with creativity, right? Getting together with people and going for a walk, with getting together with people and singing songs, doing karaoke, playing instruments, getting out in nature. These are pleasures that are still aligned. We have to look beyond commerce, beyond the social fabric of a consumer society to get to where we don't need willpower, where we are being pulled, attracted magnetically by pleasure to things that are actually good for us. So if you stop and think about it for a minute, every animal on the planet that's not our pet basically operates on the same program that we operate. Seek pleasure, avoid pain, save energy. All right, those are the three mandates of a competitive species, of a competitive organism. And every organism on the face of the earth from time immemorial has survived, made it to this point, proven itself in a niche by following those principles, by seeking pleasure. Animals eat what gives them pleasure, right? And only when they are introduced to a human environment does this become a problem, right? When we see squirrels at a fair eating chicken wings, when we give rats in a maze cocaine pellets or sugar pellets, right? But in nature, every creature's pleasure is aligned with not just survival, but the optimal chance of survival, the optimal chance for reproduction. So finding ways to remind ourselves that we are of nature, that we are not, it's not humans and nature, and I try to go out into nature, which is of course a good start if you're not, but that we can find guidance from nature, from doing things in nature, from doing things that are of our nature that naturally lift us up, right? Organisms don't naturally go to a box with stale air and sit and not move for 8-9 hours a day. That's not natural, right? So regardless, whatever you talk about, work, like we have to understand, regardless of how much you love your work, we still have to see that certain parts of it are simply unnatural, and therefore we have to apply willpower to be okay with them. Right? I'm not saying that we should not use willpower. I'm not saying that we should stay in bed. But what I am saying, in addition to step one, which is seeking out natural, healthy pleasures in alignment with our ingrained, evolutionarily success-focused pleasure sensors, we can begin to trust those once we get out of convenience stores and office buildings. But the other thing is then maybe explore mitigating, reducing, eliminating some of the things that we are tolerating in our lives, some of the things that we don't need to keep in our lives anymore. And I don't want this to be a statement that is completely insensitive to the economic realities that people face. I don't want this to be, hey, everyone can just, quit your job and start a business, or everyone should just take the summer off and go on vacation. It's really good for you, right? I understand that that is not an option for many people. What I would like to encourage, though, is for curiosity and questioning. See, how much of what we perceive as our responsibilities, as our inescapables, are truly inescapable? And where can we align more closely with our human values? Because look, we have a crisis. We have a human crisis, a human-created climate crisis, ecological crisis, social crisis, spiritual crisis, and we're not going to solve it with carbon taxes. We're not going to solve it with treaties. We can mitigate some of the damage with those things. We're going to solve it by becoming human beings who love our lives and who don't have to live in a society in which my gain is your loss, where we can create generative lives together, where we can live lives that are in harmony with what brings humans joy: connection, love, labor, recognition, service, rest, right? And so what it's going to take ultimately, and this is a far cry from, hey, help me lose weight, hey, help me stop eating Snickers bars, but we need to do eventually, and we need to do it sooner rather than later, is to start to not just focus on individuals, not just say, well, okay, so you want to come to WellStart Health to lose weight, we will help you lose weight, we will help you act differently in a completely broken society. We send people out of WellStart to begin to change that society, to create one in which health can be the default, in which joy, connection, love, meaning, purpose, service, life can be the default. And so to the extent that you can begin to question, where are the intolerables in my life that I am applying willpower to stick with? And then because of that willpower depletion, I'm vulnerable to all this junk. Where can I start to reduce that in a way that also changes society, that also makes it not less, I'm not saying like, okay, so you're a billionaire, you're an Elon Musk, and you can build yourself a bunker 300 feet underground to save you from climate change, or you can start building rockets to another planet. I'm not saying how can you escape from this world unscathed. I'm saying how can you start to shift the things that are intolerable to you, that are probably systemically intolerable, to begin to change the world, to begin to make a world in which other people have less to tolerate as well. I'm going to stop there. If there are any questions, I think I'm seeing the comments. So if you have questions, you can post them there. If you are interested we don't go all this far in WellStart Health, at least certainly not in the 12 weeks, but we're starting a new cohort on Monday, August 5th. And so if you're interested in that, you can go to wellstarthealth.com/program. And if you found this useful and interesting, I would love it if you could share it. This will really help us spread the message, spread the word. I don't see any questions, so I want to thank everyone for watching. Have a great day, my friends.